As you continue to work on your first module's content and assignments, I want to go ahead and offer this overview of the Project 1 directions. A lot of this information is contained on the actual directions sheet in the course syllabus appendix or the projects, but I want to kind of tease out a little bit of it to maybe give you a fuller idea of the assignment, as well as perhaps give you some ideas about how you might go about approaching the assignment. Although there will be a subsequent video in which I kind of go over examples or tips for what I might do if I were to complete this assignment. So in this assignment, you have chiefly 5 objectives, and they're stated here, and again, you should be familiar with them from the assignment sheet. But the idea here is for you to expand how you see the word and the idea of text and the opportunity of reading, and to understand how the boundaries of discourse community function to mark, to include, and exclude, to see how we can actually see how texts work for certain discourse communities and how you can participate in them or at least remark on them from the outside perspective. So by the 2nd of October at 12 noon, you aim to complete a 3 to 5 page paper in which you have chosen an object, a multimodal object, and you try to read it and harkening back to the video in which I talk about text and reading, the idea of reading here is to inventory, asking those what questions to draw observations about a text in order to see where that text fits and how it fits rhetorically with its audience and its purpose and its authorship of it. So you aim to take an object. That could be a John Oliver TV show or snippet. It could be an animated GIF or GIF. It could be a moving picture. It could be a statue on campus, like the statue of Gandhi, for example, or it could be the entirety of Peace Plaza with the entirety of all of those statues and monuments on it. But the point is to take a text that is not simply words on a page or screen and to explain how they fit for the audience. For the example of the Peace Plaza, you would ask questions of what textual elements are present. So the statue of Gandhi, the statue of Dr. King, the table for the Thoreau table, for that peace table. How do they all fit together? How are they located? Why do we have those things there? Why King, Gandhi, and Thoreau or Walden? Why these different kinds of texts, these statues, and not other ones? How do they fit UNF? What is it about that plaza that actually marks them and makes it fit UNF? If you notice, those older buildings on campus that have numbers like 1, 2, 3, etc. have a really weird architecture because they were built in the 70s during a protest period where students would spray paint buildings, and the result was that this architecture actually prevents spray painting and tagging from really showing up clearly with the corrugated concrete. So the Peace Plaza is actually situated in a place of protest. Notice how there's all these different kinds of planters and areas that are rising up to break up the courtyard, so students can't easily gather there. If you've never noticed that, go outside and look at the Peace Plaza, and you'll see that among the older and core part of campus, the architecture of campus is to prevent students from massing. It's an anti-protest technique architecturally, and so it's kind of interesting then that the statues of Gandhi, King, and the Thoreau table are all in the same place. So it kind of makes sense that they'd be there to speak to that history. But if you didn't know that or you hadn't researched that, it may be difficult for you to find out about that specific discourse community of UNF. So you have 2 sets of protocols you're trying to enact here. One is to create an inventory of the text non-linguistic features, and the second one is to create a paper in which you argue how that text fits into that discourse community in which you've situated it. That's not too difficult a task, I don't think. Really, that means make a list of features and explain how those features connect to the discourse community you believe, argument, they fit. So the idea of the inventory, this should be where you start. So whatever text you pick, whether it's how someone's dorm room is decorated, whether it's Peace Plaza, whether it's the organization and layout of the library or the art it has in there, anything you can pick out here. The idea is to make a list of observations about that object or that text. And this should be 1 or 2 pages. And really it should just be a very simple list of factual information in that way. So once you've done that, you can go back and organize and start looking for patterns and organize by categories. But you don't want just to have a bunch of crib notes on a piece of paper. That won't work. You need to have a document here that you're going to include after the project. So once you have this information, you'll create a paper from this information, and as an appendix to that document, you're going to include your actual inventory as an appendix. Appendix A, inventory of, and whatever text title you're inventorying. The analytical paper here, the actual writing component of the assignment, so you've chosen a multimodal object, a commercial, a TV program, an animated GIF or GIF, a statue of something, a table setting, the way your roommate has decorated her side of the room, etc. And in a cogent, coherent paper, you're going to argue which discourse community it belongs to, that object, or as well as identify the specific rhetorical aspects of that text. So think back to the rhetorical triangle in that video in which we discussed the idea of the authorship, the ethics, the credibility, the nature of the author, as well as the purpose, as well as the textual elements, those logos, features, and how they connect, and how they fit for a specific audience or discourse community, and explain how those specific aspects function to reach that discourse community. So the idea here then is to make a list, find a pattern in that list, and explain how that pattern is appropriate to whatever audience it's appropriate to. The format of the paper, again, this is a redux of the assignment sheet, but it should be 3 to 5 pages in length. There's no absolute number here. I'm not going to tell you between 1,000 and 1,500 words. I will, however, suggest a length to you, and that is, generally speaking, for a good, substantial argument, it'll probably take you around 1,250. So if you get to about 900 words and you think, I just can't write anymore, well, let's have a conversation, because really, you're probably not stating as much as explicitly as you can, I'm imagining, and teasing out evidence the way you need to. It's really hard for us to take obvious things or things that appear obvious to us and write about them because it seems like, well, it's obvious. For other people, though, for other readers of our work, we need to be careful because we don't know what's obvious to them, and so we have to take time to explain things. So 1,250 words is not very much. Formatted to MLA standards, so 12-point Times New Roman font, double-spaced, indented paragraphs, 0-point spacing between paragraphs, header on the first page, heading rather on the first page, headers on all the pages after that in the top right-hand corner, etc. etc. Have a thesis. This should be a thesis-driven paper, and it should be explicitly organized. So those simple features there. As far as the assessment, broadly speaking, you're going to get feedback based upon a couple different features. How well you articulate your purpose explicitly. That is your thesis statement. Why does this paper exist? In order to do what? How well organized you've ended up revising it to. Your first draft will probably be all over the place. Your introduction will probably be your conclusion paragraph as you work out the idea on a white screen, a computer screen. But it's the second, third, and fourth drafts that are really important because you redeploy information, reorganize it, cut it, paste it, expand upon things, slice things out. Things you slice out might include evidence that you're trying to use to support the purpose and how well you analyze that evidence. So when you get feedback, always remember that no evidence speaks for itself. If it did, the world would be a lot easier to get along in. Instead, we have to explain how the evidence works, how mechanically accurate your prose is, so how well you proofed it. If you tend to have certain kinds of errors like comma splices or typos, and you know that, well, it's probably going to take a few drafts to get them all out of the 3 or 4 or 5 pages of your writing. That's okay. And in plain expression of ideas, this is a difficult thing for most people. We don't talk plainly. We tend to talk around and circumnavigate our ideas with words and become very loquacious and wordy and just like that. But in writing, because you have the opportunity to revise and you need to be economical for your reader's sake, well, on that occasion, then you can think about how to revise things to make them plainer. And that's why you have 4 weeks to write a paper, to make time to actually make revisions to your work to make the paper plainer and easier to read. So then, drafting and revising. Remember, for the learning contract, you're aiming to draft this document at least 3 times. 1 full rough draft, get feedback on it, revise it again, include your explanations of why it's better, and then submit it, get feedback again, repeat, repeat, repeat. Go to the Writing Center if you need to, come see me, meet with a graduate assistant. It doesn't matter what steps you include in what order, but my advice would be this: submit a draft online, no matter how uncomfortable you are about its quality, and get feedback on it. And once you have feedback on it, then let's meet. It's easier to talk to you in person or via Skype if we already have a draft behind us that we can talk about for specific information. It's hard for you to come in and say, I've got writing problems, and I say, like what? And you say, well, you know, I don't know, but I will have writing problems when I turn in writing. And it's much easier if you've already submitted writing. I can say, well, looks like you have these kinds of issues, and they're specific now, and you can deal with them. So be sure that when you do submit a revised work, it'll be on the last page of your document. You include just a 1-page, half-page explanation of what those revisions are and why they are important.